it is time for Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave, not that busy of a weekend for you, just Roadblock.
Yeah, Roadblock in New Japan, yeah.
Yes. But we were just talking about Kurt Angle on this show. Is this final match on TNA this week? They seem to handle it actually very well, putting over Bobby Lashley. But more so for Kurt Angle, what do you think is next for him, aside from this weird show he's doing next week?
I think he's going to try to get into acting because his body's pretty wrecked up, and he needs, a new avenue. So I think he's going to spend, a while trying to do that, and if that doesn't work out, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't closed the door on wrestling, but he's pretty beat up.
Has he closed the door on fighting, Dave?
He's not going to fight. I mean, I don't know that he could pass a physical to fight.
All right, let's flip on over, Dave. There's been, we were just talking about TNA, who are, of course, doing their tapings on Tuesday. But speaking of Florida, there's been chat about actually having a physical WWE Hall of Fame happening in Orlando, Florida. But then there was a contradictory report from the Orlando Business Journal. Do you know if it is or is not happening?
I mean, it's been talked about for years. I mean, as far as is it 100%, that I don't know. But it's certainly something that's been in discussion for it's been several years.
Do you think it's something long-term that is viable, Dave? Like, certainly if you're going to put it somewhere, Orlando does make a lot of sense for many reasons, but as something that's a tourist attraction year-round, I mean, they've gone to the well before when it comes to restaurants, and I don't know what the viability of this is really long-term.
Yeah, I don't either. Most Hall of Fames are not money makers, and a wrestling Hall of Fame is not going to be as popular as most Hall of Fames. So, and I don't know that Orlando's the right place for a wrestling Hall of Fame. I mean, I guess Universal, considering the place, probably would be okay. But I mean, like it's in theory, it's in the place of NBA City. To me, if the NBA can't make a run of it, it's hard for me to believe the WWE can because the NBA's just got so much more mainstream appeal.
Well, I'm just thinking if you do want to have live Raw parties there, you have so much talent that can essentially be thrown over there on a moment's notice. I mean, just for that.
Well, you do have that because all those NXT people live there, and then a lot of the crew also lives in Tampa, which isn't far away.
Right.
So you could do a lot of appearances.
And Hogan's always around. I mean, he could stop by, lend his Hogan's Beach experience.
That's true.
Would it be Hogan or would it be Terry Bollea?
Oh, that's true.
That's a good question,
very
too.
different as of this week,
Depends
guys.
who you get on the phone.
That's right. Along with that, so we just mentioned Roadblock there. What did you think of the event, Dave?
I liked the event. I thought that all the matches were good. I thought the crowd was good. It wasn't. If you're like watching it as a soap opera for storyline, you really didn't get much. And I mean, I could certainly. The Triple H Dean Ambrose match was exactly what I expected it to be, but I also didn't want it to be that way because I just thought that, it's like it. Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar is the co-main event at WrestleMania, and even though Triple H is in the main event at WrestleMania and he wasn't going to lose the championship, I thought that you could protect Dean Ambrose a little bit more than they did. I mean, they did to a degree, but it's still pedigree in the middle, I mean, that was the finish.
But do you see them making more out of that false finish or that 3 count that did happen yesterday?
No, I just thought that was something to give Ambrose, it was something to give Ambrose since he was going to lose clean. It's not like I see them adding him to the match or anything like that or them going on and on and on about how he won. I don't think, because that doesn't even make any sense to do that right now because all the focus should be on Roman Reigns from this point forward.
Well, one of the ideas we threw around, Dave, was the idea you do this disputed finish and you get the rematch on TV, and that necessitates Roman's return, where inadvertently he leads to Ambrose losing. And then at least going into WrestleMania, you have the option there that, well, was it just an accident and he cost Ambrose the title, or did he save his own title match for WrestleMania? And at least it gives you something, I think, coming out of WrestleMania. And it seems that Roman's probably just going to show up and just return as usual.
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to do that, they should have done it last night.
Yeah,
and that was actually one of the ideas that I was thinking, something very similar for last night. And I don't know, I can't give you a good reason why they didn't do it, because at least then you protect Dean Ambrose in the loss.
And Reigns, I see he's advertised for the SmackDown tapings this week, but are they holding him off till Raw next week?
I don't know. I mean, he was advertised for the Raw last week, so you know what he's at, and he was advertised for the weekend house shows too. So you know what he's advertised for and when he's coming back, I don't really know.
Last night on the show, there was also quite the bait and switch in regards to the fact that we had a match of Brock Lesnar versus Bray Wyatt advertised, and then we ended up getting Brock Lesnar in a handicap match with Bray Wyatt and Luke Harper, and Bray and Brock didn't touch. Well, we've heard this could be an injury situation. Do you have any more on that?
It is an injury. Bray Wyatt's back was all messed up, so he couldn't wrestle. So that's why they did it that way. You know, they could have said that, but they didn't. You know, I mean, they just didn't say it.
When it comes to the Wyatt family, Dave, I mean, this has been an act that's now been on television for close to 3 years, and I think that the change of course for WrestleMania, I mean, is this a time where they're really reevaluating this group? Because there's a lot going for them, but they are missing something, in particular Bray, and it just seems like he's going to be lost in the shuffle at WrestleMania and probably ends up in that Battle Royal. I mean, has a corner been turned when it comes to Bray Wyatt being in that mix?
Well, I mean, he's supposed to be really strong coming out of WrestleMania. I mean, like as far as post WrestleMania, there was talk of him winning the championship between WrestleMania and the end of the year. So they do have high hopes for him.
Like it just doesn't appear he has any program going into WrestleMania
now.
now.
I know, because he had the Brock thing, and they took that away. And maybe he'll cause Brock to lose to Dean Ambrose, and then they'll go with Brock and Bray, because Brock and Bray was a direction post WrestleMania. So maybe that's where they're going to go.
You know, Dave, you mentioned that interference, in the possibility of that interference in a match that's already a street fight match. On top of that, we have Hell in the Cell, which has to be jammed with stunts and smoke and mirrors. And then now looking at the Intercontinental title thrown in, that's a multi-person match. I'm guessing it ends up as some sort of ladder match. Seems like we have a lot of stipulations on this WrestleMania card. It seems like overkill to me.
Well, that's what they do that's what they do many years. I shouldn't say every year, but many years. They if you really look back, they have a lot of different stipulations, because the stipulation, and with WWE, the stipulation matches seem to give the wrestlers a lot more latitude. In WrestleMania, you want the most latitude to do the most different things you can, because everybody's looking for that moment that people remember at WrestleMania. And in a straight match, it's harder to deliver than in a stunt match.
Tomorrow night, Undertaker, Shane McMahon, Lesnar, all scheduled for Raw. Do you have any indication in regards to what we're seeing here?
No, I don't. No. I don't know. I don't know what direction or anything. I mean, I was hoping that Undertaker would give an explanation, but I've given up on that.
Yeah, that should have happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Also, this week on television, we saw the NXT Samoa Joe versus Sami Zayn took up the entire episode of NXT. This was a match that was debated in regards to, some people said it was great, some people said they were walking out during it. After watching it on TV, what was your take on the match, Dave?
In the middle. Mm-hmm. I mean, people who said it was like match of the year, I was like flabbergasted when it was over, because I couldn't see that even close. I mean, it was almost like I was thinking, like, does the Emperor have new clothes? That's how much I couldn't see it. I thought, I thought that the third fall was very good. I thought the most of the match was killing time to get to the third fall, and the first fall I thought really dragged. The pacing and everything like that. I mean, I've seen matches paced just like that work. But to me, it's like, it was the first hour at Full Sail. It's Sami Zayn, who's the most over guy at Full Sail, pretty much. So you had everything going for it. But when I was watching it, I mean, the crowd they weren't really with it. I mean, I'm not saying they were not with it, but they were just like, it felt like a normal match. It was at no point did the crowd explode. And the first, whatever it was, 30 minutes, the crowd was pretty quiet, except for maybe a spot here and there. I mean, the work was all right. I mean, in some places the work was great. In some places it was just all right. So I thought it was, I would say a disappointing match to me, but, it wasn't something I'd walk out in or anything like that. But the first 20 minutes were pretty slow.
Also, Dave, I mean, you reported it this week in the newsletter. They have sold 84,000 tickets for WrestleMania.
84,000 tickets out.
84 are out. All right. And is that's the max they can fit in with their configuration. Is that correct?
There's like a few hundred left, but I mean, I don't think that they can really put more than about 85, I'm guessing, in. Yeah, I mean, that's what the real number is going to be is a little bit more than 84.
One more thing before we go here, Dave. Just want to touch on Bellator. Ken Shamrock and Kimbo Slice have tested positive. Now, it's not known what drugs as of yet. Is there such thing as performance de-enhancing drugs that they may have been on?
Yeah, I mean, there are, if you talk about heavy sedatives. I mean, but, yeah, it's going to be, I mean, to me, the key is what exactly do they test positive for? Because it could be marijuana. I mean,
right.
it could be PEDs. If it's PEDs, in the case of Kimbo Slice, I mean, I don't think it really matters what it was. It's it's not like his performance was. I hate to think that his performance was enhanced watching that fight.
Exactly.
When it comes to Ken, I mean, if it was a PED and Ken tested positive, I think that to me throws out any cry of a rematch.
Right.
Because I think he did deserve a rematch. Not that I really wanted to see it, but then it's going to draw, and he does deserve it if you really think about it. Because I mean, he got beat by a low blow that the referee didn't see, and that was a very viable complaint. But if he was using PEDs, I think that takes his complaint away.
And just as we wrap this up, Dave, I mean, any expectation of what we are going to see next Sunday night? Because this is quite the show on paper. I mean, Tank Abbott is fighting Dan Severn on this particular card. I mean, are we just expecting a train wreck here?
That's a train wreck. I mean, God only knows what Tank Abbott looks like. I mean, I haven't seen him in years. And I mean, when was the last time he fought? It had to be 5 years ago.
It was versus Kimbo, wasn't it?
No,
there was more.
He did fight a
he
small
fought
show,
Kimbo.
I think, about 3 years ago. But I mean, he's been pretty much a recluse since that point. So
yeah, I mean, I remember seeing a picture of him, and this is probably about 7 years ago, when he looked 100 years old. Not really, but he looked 55. I mean, and he actually is 50 now. So, and I doubt that he's taken any care of himself. I mean, Dan Severn has probably taken more care of himself, but Dan Severn's 8 years older, and also, I don't know how much Dan Severn's wrestling he's going to have left at that age. And in a stand-up fight, Tank Abbott is going to have the edge. So Tank Abbott, maybe actually will win that fight. But I mean, I don't know. I was. When it was Ken Shamrock, I was a little bit intrigued. When it's Tank Abbott, it's like I don't know what exactly it means, because it's like, yeah, they had a fight, and Dan Severn destroyed him in the fight that they had years and years ago, like 20 years ago. But it wasn't like it was this big rivalry, and they had a series of fights or anything like that went unresolved. Like with Ken and Dan, you had that unresolved second fight thing.
I'm just fascinated that Michael Bisping is allowed to be on this card.
I am too.
If I were UFC, I'd be pulling him off this thing so fast.
But they made a precedent of their guys being allowed to do grappling matches. I mean, Chael did. Like a lot of their guys, Josh Barnett and Chael all did grappling matches while they were in UFC. I think some of the other guys have as well. So they've created that loophole where you can't do pro wrestling, you can't do boxing, but you can do grappling matches.
It's just such for a first time for a company that's out there not knowing what to expect in the freak show that they're designing here.
Yeah, it's a freak show. Plus, like, to me, like if I've got a guy under contract, I don't want him on somebody else's pay-per-views.
Especially
especially like Bisping. I mean,
yes.
think about this. I mean, granted, it's another sport, so it doesn't count in a sense. But do you really want, like, Bisping? If he's perhaps, I mean, he's in a spot where it's potentially he could get a championship fight.
Yep.
And do you want him to lose to Chael Sonnen in a grappling match? Which absolutely could happen, I would think, because, again, Chael's a good wrestler.
Yep.
I mean, that's his specialty.
I guess you set up that when Chael comes back to UFC, right?
I mean, you could do a fight, and Chael is going to come back.
He wants to.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everyone's saying, and I think he's ready in just a couple of months, so yeah.
Well, we shall see. We got to wrap this week, Dave, but what is in the Observer?
Hopefully, and almost definitely, a big story on Hayabusa, a big story on the IWA in the 1970s with Eddie Einhorn. So two big history pieces, and more on Lord Blears, which we didn't talk about last week, but Hawaiian wrestling icon, and just a really intriguing person from that era of pro wrestling. From being a war hero and the surfing family and the voice of wrestling in Hawaii for decades, and just one of those classic old time wrestlers.
Sounds great. We look forward to reading that. And then, Dave, we'll chat with you next week where we will break down Tank Abbott versus Dan Severn.
Yeah, I know. What a Sunday that's going to be.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Talk to you next week.
Okay. Have a great week.